Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Governor, welcome to Hannity.
Sean, good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, why don't I give you a chance, in your words, to frame the debate as you see it, Governor?
Well, it's real simple. Well, we're trying to balance the budget. As you mentioned in the introduction, we're broke. The fact of the matter is, like nearly every other state across the country, we face a major budget deficit going into the next biennium. In our case, it's $3.6 billion. It's because for years, political leaders, in many cases of both political parties, have pushed it off to the future. Well, that time of reckoning has come. It's time for us to balance the budget. And one of the best ways we can do it is tackling these public employee wage and benefit issues. And for us, we're asking for something that is bold politically, no doubt about it. Anytime you challenge the status quo, it's going to be bold, as we've seen in this past week. But really, compared to where everybody else outside of government has, it is a very modest, reasonable request. We're asking for pension and health care contributions that are still significantly less than the national average and much less than what most Wisconsin's hardworking taxpayers are paying today.
All right, so you have a $137 million budget deficit this year and $3.6 billion in the next two-year budget. So you have a pretty big deficit here. So the question is, and the issue is, and some on the unions will say, well, wait a minute, we'll concede the point on paying more into our pensions and our health care benefits, but why take away our collective bargaining rights, not on salary, but on benefits? What's your answer to that?
Well, it's real simple, and it's one of those irony of ironies. A week ago, those same union leaders were telling us, oh, my goodness, we can't do this. Nobody will be able to survive if they have to pay 5.8% for a pension and 12.6% for health care premiums. Now, a week later, they changed the tune. The reality is they don't really care about their workers' money. All they want are the public employee union dues that right now the state law mandates that have to go into their coffers. That's what they really want to get their hands on. What we're asking for is to make a little bit more for a pension contribution, a little bit more for a health contribution, but then also in response to our workers who are good, decent, respected workers by us, we want to give them the ability to say you have an option of whether or not you want to be in a union, and we're not going to mandatorily take your dues away, so you can use those $500 or $600 if you're a state employee that you otherwise pay for union dues, or up to $1,000 for a teacher's union dues, and you can use those if you choose to pay for your health care and your pension contributions. The other part, though, the important reason is why it's got to go further than that, why we have to fundamentally change collective bargaining, is it goes beyond just pension and health care contributions. I'll give you one good example. Over the years, most of the school districts in our state have had to get, because of collective bargaining contracts, we've been required to get their health care insurance plans from WA Trust. That's the State Teachers Union health care plan, because it's under collective bargaining. If we pass our bill, ultimately, they could go into the state employee health care plan and save $68 million. That's money on top of those pension and health care savings.
Let me ask you, a lot of the teachers have been involved, Governor, in a sick-out in your state, as you know, and even some students have been out there, and I'm told that the request of teachers to go out and protest even against their will. My question is, and then we hear reports that doctors, we reported this on Fox News this weekend, that doctors are just, signing off on these sick statements when we know that there are teachers out there in the crowd and speaking. Are you planning on taking a position that if they continue to call out sick, that you might threaten to fire them?
Well, a couple different things. One, I haven't seen the videotape. I've heard about it, but obviously if there are doctors and teachers doing that sort of thing, abusing the system, that's outrageous, and there's a whole objective system set in this state to review medical professionals who might be falsifying information, and we'll leave that up to that objective panel, but obviously they would take that very seriously. When it comes to teachers, unlike air traffic controllers at the federal level or state employees in the state of Wisconsin's government system, school districts are operated by individual school superintendents and school boards. Many of those superintendents have notified their teachers that they'll face disciplinary action if they're failing to show up because of being in protest, as opposed to taking legitimate time off. I support them. I back them on that. The good news is I think the teachers union wised up this week after getting a lot of grief from parents and essentially told their teachers to go back to work. But if state employees aren't there, obviously we would terminate people and replace them.
What about the Democratic senators, Governor, that are holed up in a Best Western in Illinois? Can they be compelled to come back?
Well, that's the irony of all ironies. Even the teachers union wised up to the fact that the public's no longer on their side, and they forced their employees that were protesting here to come back to work. We've got 14 Senate Democrats who are holding out and realizing that ultimately, if they want to participate in democracy, they got to be in the arena. The arena is in Madison, Wisconsin, here in the Capitol. It's not in a hotel and suite down in Rockford. It's not down in big hotels down in Chicago. It's ultimately back in Madison. I applaud Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald, who's bringing the state Senate to the floor tomorrow. They're going to start bringing up important pieces of legislation. My hope is the constituents in those 14 state Senate districts stand up and tell those senators to do what they were elected to do, what they're being paid to do, and what they must do starting this week.
Governor, let me ask you about President Obama's involvement here, because the president has come out in support of the unions, obviously, which means, you know, look, he didn't put forward a budget that he was going to balance. He was cheerleading for those, obviously, in the end, would be pushing for bankruptcy and insolvency. What did you make of the president's involvement, and also the DNC, and also the president's group Organizing for America?
Well, simply put, the President of the United States should start focusing on balancing the federal budget, because it's a horrible mess. It's what's driving these massive problems. It's about time people at the federal level started to fess up to the fact that the federal government's broke. And I think the last thing he should be doing is sticking his nose in any state's problems, let alone Wisconsin's, when they have failed miserably at the federal level. But in the larger context, you know, the people who are here from Wisconsin over the past week and over the weekend, the tens of thousands of protesters have every right to have their voices be heard. But I've said repeatedly, I'm not going to let their voices be overshadow or overpower the voices of the legitimate millions of hardworking taxpayers in my state who hired me to get the budget balanced and to get Wisconsin working again, to show that Wisconsin's open for business. And increasingly, you literally have tens of thousands of protesters coming in from Chicago and Nevada and New Jersey and other places.
Yeah.
We're not going to be
let me ask you one last question, because we're running out of time, Governor. You have said emphatically that you are not backing down. Do you stand by that today?
Right.
And also I wanted you to comment on, you know, the president was lecturing the country after the Tucson massacre about civility in the country and about the tone in the country. I have seen signs that I can't even mention on this program, you being compared to Adolf Hitler, being called a Nazi and a fascist and Mussolini and et cetera, et cetera. Your reaction to that, and do you promise tonight that you will not back down under any circumstances, and are you concerned any Republicans might go with the Democrats?
No, I think our Senate Republicans, our Assembly Republicans have only grown stronger. They're not going to be intimidated by union leaders from Washington or any other state. They're going to listen to the people of Wisconsin. They elected us overwhelmingly to balance the budget, not only now, but to make sure we make a commitment to the future instead of dire consequences for our children in the future. So we're not going to back down. We're doing the right thing for the right reasons, and in the end, you know, democracy means participating. We're going to stand up for the people.
All right, Governor, appreciate you being with us, and we'll be following this story as it continues to unfold. Thank you.